Good morning, or really good evening, everyone. I don't know why I said good morning there, but there's a question that I've been getting a lot from people who talk to me on Albert's List, and this is probably a good time, as good a time as any, to make this video. We hit 23,000 members today, and it's a pretty good milestone because it's pretty much how far we've gone on the last 4 years since we started this whole thing on March 5th, 2013. And I get a lot of questions from people about why I started this whole entire thing. And for those of you who've been here for the last really 48 hours, it's been a really, really active time in this group over the last couple of days. And I really appreciate all the engagement and interaction from all of you because it just shows me how much all of you are helping each other and engaging with each other and everything. And so, I wanted to take this Feel Good Friday. It's Friday evening. It's after 7. Most of you are probably on your way home driving, so I know that's why there's only 3 people here, because if any of you were actually here at work, I would probably be really, really worried for you. But, I get a lot of people who ask me why I started this group in the first place. And I know a lot of you probably wonder because, hey, here's this guy and a couple of his fellow administrators who post jobs in here all day long. We have discussions. We have all these recruiters. And what is the point of all of this? And so I wanted to kind of talk about what the Albert's List story is, to shed a little bit light on why I do this and why I'm willing to enroll myself and put myself in so many of your lives on a daily basis. And, really it actually starts about 7 years ago this very month. And so, we're on March 31st. It's not April Fool's Day yet. None of this is really a story that's going to be a joke of any sort. So it's actually it actually takes its root in pretty serious history. And I think to really get to the heart of it, you have to look at who I was when I was this new graduate. I didn't really understand what it meant to work in the working world. I'm just as clueless as a lot of the people who are, in this group today who ask the very same questions that maybe I wish I could have asked when I first came into the workforce. So for those of you who've never been to my LinkedIn, who don't really know me, who don't really know my story, I actually graduated college about 2010, in March of 2010. So I saved about a quarter off of my studies, and I'm a graduate of Santa Clara University. And I was an information systems graduate, and this was right after the recession when things were really, really, really terrible. And I come from a family of engineers. There's all these. My parents are pretty well off. They worked in engineering in Silicon Valley for over 30 years, doing their thing. And they were very successful. They gave me a really good childhood, and sometimes with the goodness of everything that comes to you and comes to you fairly easily, you expect things that maybe you don't quite deserve to expect. And one of those things for me, I think, was the post-college employment story. And so, I graduated from Santa Clara University in March of 2010, but my story of where I think I first started getting this job search nirvana began in about February. And I've posted this a couple times in Motivation Monday with the intention of telling you the story of what it means to give value, but it really started with my first interview at Cisco. And so it was around this time, January, February of 2010, when, these big companies start coming out to my university and they want to start hiring their new grads for the upcoming year. And so Cisco was one of them, and they had these IT analyst roles, and they had a couple of them open, and they were going to exclusively hire Santa Clara University grads. And, I was pretty qualified. I had the degree. I was going to get the degree. And I remember walking into that interview, and in that interview, I totally bombed it. So this is probably going to happen to somebody in this group at some point in time. It happened to me for sure, where I emphasized everything but the value that I would bring in as that employee. In essence, I asked, what are the job benefits? What are the retirement benefits? What are the pay? And I know a lot of you are going to probably cringe at that very moment. And you know what? I would cringe at that very moment too, now that I know that, because you come into this I was, I guess, the stereotypical millennial that just wanted to be entitled to this nice salary, this nice lifestyle, thinking that, by the time I'm at this age now, I'm 29, that I could be living in my own house with my own family and all that really good junk. And so I prefer the journey that I've been on that's been a lot more suffering and a lot more, days and times sitting in the middle of therapist lounges talking about what's the heck has gone on with my life, because I think it's a lot richer than saying that I took the fast track and the straight line into getting a connection, which a lot of people from really well-off universities get, but, I didn't get. And so I remember walking out of that interview, and I walked out of that interview with an Indian rupee from my interview person. And I remember showing off this Indian rupee to my friends and being like, you know what? He didn't give me a business card, but he gave me this 2-cent Indian rupee because he just came back from India. And I don't have that rupee. I think it might be somewhere in the drawer at the house that I live in, but that my parents had. But I never got to follow up with him, and I also never got a follow-up phone call from Cisco saying that they wanted to take me for an on-site interview. And I thought it was the weirdest thing because I thought I nailed that interview. I was the one doing all the talking. I was the one basically sitting there acting like the know-it-all. And that was probably the biggest problem because I didn't spend time listening to their challenges that they had. And so that Indian rupee, I realized, was a symbolism later of the value that this person thought that I would bring to this organization, which was very, very little. And the moment I felt that, and that was probably about 6 months to a year later when I really, really reflected upon it, that's when I really realized, you know what? I totally understand why I didn't get that interview and why I didn't get that job, and I totally don't deserve it either. And so that was the beginning of really the story of how this group began and why Albert's List is something I'm so passionate about. I mean, it starts with my name, but it doesn't really encompass that because it's all about every one of you and all the help and all the passion that you guys are giving to each other in terms of helping people survive, helping people do what they need to do to make sense of this really crazy and, excuse the language, fucked up world where everybody is trying to climb over each other, and really we should be trying to help each other as much as possible. So that was the first story that leads me to starting this group. The second part of it is about a month later. So I graduate a quarter early. It's spring break. I'm at home. It's kind of dark outside, and I'm applying for jobs at a company that my mother has worked for at that point for about 24 years. She'd been working at IBM, and I wanted to work in marketing because really, I had no idea what the heck I wanted to do. I sounded like I was qualified, and I was helping my university build their social media presence. And the darkness of that day is very, very symbolic. I was sitting at the kitchen table. There was just a light on. My mother was making dinner. And I was firing off these applications one by one. And, if you heard any of what Mike Tomasello said earlier, if you do that, it's pretty useless. And so I looked up from my laptop. I looked over to my mother. And you might think that, I might have gotten this gene of wanting to network from somebody. But you know what? I had to pick this up all on my own. Because I ended up asking my mother, hey, is there anyone you can connect me to? Y'all have worked in Silicon Valley for 25 years. There's somebody you've had to have known by now, right? It seems like a fairly reasonable question to ask. Unfortunately, my mother was like, you and your dad are in engineering. We don't network with anyone. We have our close group of friends, and that's pretty much it. And so this is one of those turning point moments, right? If we were to make a biopic movie about me where I was somehow the hero, this is the moment where you walk back to your room, and this is the moment where you look out at this vast expanse of sky and you're wondering, okay, what the hell am I going to do next? And that's exactly what I did, because up until that time, I was a fairly introverted person. I was somebody who really, I did network on campus, but I didn't really understand why anyone wanted to network in the first place. You're talking to people. I enjoy interacting. I enjoy engaging. I enjoy relating. I've always wanted to relate to people, but professionally, it was more of this wild card. So I really spent the next 10 weeks up until graduation thinking about what this whole entire job search thing meant, especially post-recession where new grads were suffering so much. It was like, what are we all going to do? You had my school especially where accounting and engineering people were really emphasized, and everyone else had to figure out whatever their job search was on their own, and that was really mightily tough. And so, I spent the next 10 weeks on the lead up to graduation doing the monster career builder Craigslist, where, I called a lot of phone numbers, I made a lot of connections, I drove places to the Bay Area that I would never imagine to drive to. And one of these included, something for a Salesforce consultancy, which was up in, I think, Twin Peaks, where this guy lived. And I met him at this random pizza shop, and we talked about Salesforce for 3 hours. And that was actually my first job out of school. And this first job out of school, I remember the morning after graduation, the Monday morning after graduation, I started this job. Because, I was like, I'm not going to take a couple months off. I want to just get started on this part of life immediately. So that's what I did. And I remember sitting in my apartment. I was just a couple blocks off from Santa Clara University. And I was sitting in the Park Central apartments that are over there. And I had my laptop on the coffee table in front of me, and I looked to my right and I looked to my left, and it was a really nice sunny day. It's the middle of June, of course. It's always sunny in California. And I remember asking myself why I had taken a job and what I had done to land in a job that made me less money than the cost of what my parents had helped pay me for tuition per year. And while everyone else was going off to an office that day, possibly to start their first job after graduation, why was I sitting at home? Why wasn't I going out to lunch with coworkers and that whole thing? And that went on for about the next 8 months before I ultimately did find an office job. But it was kind of that resentment that actually started me to get into the first iteration of Albert's List, which was actually an Excel spreadsheet of about 40 different nationwide recruiters that I had started collecting over a period of time, because I wanted to keep track of who I was talking to and who was recruiting me, and I also wanted to keep track for my friends. So I had shared this spreadsheet with, I think, at least 150 friends by the time, I would say, 2011, 2012 rolled around. And, really poignant during this time was an interview that I had with eBay. It was one of those marketing contracting jobs. And it was during this marketing contract job where this person asked me how many phone books were in all of Manhattan. And, I think I probably goofed on that question. But I remember trying to answer that question best I could. And ultimately, when I didn't get that position, I felt really frustrated, because I felt like, here I was as a new grad, and I had to be somewhere else, and I wasn't sure how to get to that somewhere else. And I think that's probably how a lot of people in this group feel from time to time, because they see that there's this element of you having to be in one certain spot and then having to go to another spot, and it's like, what got you here won't necessarily get you to whatever that there is. And so what is the difference that needed to be that? And so really for me in the first 3 to 5 years of my career, it was time, and it was just meeting the right people, luckily, and it was a lot of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what stuck. And that's not what I want for any of you, because I don't think you should spend your time throwing things at walls and hoping that they stick. So that was the first couple of years of, my professional life out of school. And really, during this time between 2010, 2011, 2012, and even into the middle depths of 2013 and early 2014, up to just 3 years ago, I actually had no idea what I was doing with my career either, which, in essence here, if I had an Albert's List back when I graduated, all of you would have probably kicked my butt asking what I wanted to do with my life. And, if an exact replica of me showed up, I would probably say, yeah, we do need to kick your butt a little bit. So, where we leave off of the story here is, Albert's List began sort of on actually my own personal Facebook wall. And so in between creating these spreadsheets and connecting with different recruiters, the economy thankfully got better. As you know, the 2011, 2012, 2013 period actually was pretty good for a lot of people, especially for those who knew what they wanted. And I, at that time, had no idea what I wanted, but I somehow knew that I wanted to help other people. And this whole entire effort of helping out other people really started out on Facebook, where I started posting job listings and introductions to people and upcoming networking events. And unlike the separate posts that you see these days on Albert's List, I actually did that in one single Facebook status update. And so I guess if you look onto my Facebook, probably in my on this date post, you'll probably notice that I probably write a lot of things that way. So that was probably the second iteration. The third iteration came about March of 2013. So I realized I had been posting these posts for a while, and I was thinking, there's something I gotta do to unify everything together. And plus, I also want to help people out, and I want to see what kind of interaction I can drive. At that point, I was a social media person, and I really wanted social media marketing manager, and I really wanted to see what kind of attention I could go with. And so it actually ended up coming down to whether I wanted to create a Facebook page or whether I wanted to create a Facebook group. And ultimately, I ended up going with this group that you see today. And, it actually happened on a really, really disengaged day back on March 5th, 2013. At that point, I was a social media community manager for Cisco. I had ended up going there on a contract basis, and this was my second contract that I held there. And, I knew that I enjoyed the job, but I also knew that it was a job that I wasn't sure why I wanted. And ultimately, I would leave that for a job actually at my alma mater about a month and a half later to join them at Santa Clara University. But what was ultimately interesting about that was it came on a day where I didn't know what I was doing at work. And I started the group at 3 in the afternoon or whatever the heck it was. And I was like, you know what, let's just get job listings in here and let's start posting and let's just see what happens. And you know what, initially it wasn't the complicated rules or the Albert's List is not Tinder that you see today. It was more of those let's just see what we can do to fill this place up with content. And so if you go all the way back to 2013, you'll see job listings, you'll see events that we posted, and it really is really messy from then. It's a lot more organized now, but it was really messy back then. And I think in a lot of ways, I also started the group because I didn't really know why I wanted to start the group. I wanted a place to organize all of my thoughts together, and it sounded like a group was a good idea. So I started the group, and it kind of became that. And over time, my why for this group has changed a lot. I realized that in the middle of 2014, that I really had a come to Jesus moment in that contract that I had. And I was at HP by that time. Also another interview that I somewhat nearly failed, but I think my hiring manager felt a little sorry for me, so she took me in. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to do product marketing, and this was something that I really enjoyed. And it has really set the course for my career over the past, I would say, 3 years. But over the last 4 years, as I continue to build this group, I would say that my why has changed tremendously. What started out as an attempt to build and create attention and an attempt to really, I think, understand what working with social media has become a startup idea. And even more so, it's become an idea for understanding how we can better get people employed in this country and in this world. So I think that for a lot of us, when it comes down to the whole hiring process, it's pretty tough because school doesn't necessarily teach you what you need to bring to the business world as much as it's getting you the skills and getting you the mindset to think. The thought of acting on that is all left up to the person who wants to do any of it. So throughout your whole entire job search experience, There's no like networking that's really taught at the Career Center. You're told, okay, these are the kind of jobs that exist out there, but you're not given that full visibility of what you can truly do with your life. And that's because universities are 5 to 10 years, 20 years behind what's going on in the private sector. And there's nothing you can really blame with people around that. But you see all these new graduates who come out of school like me, who are entitled into thinking that they should have a job because they did the work and they spent the money for the degree and they sat in class and they did all of that. And so, part of it is understandable and the other part of it is not quite. And as you see here on a day-to-day basis here on Albert's List, there's a lot of questions that people have to ask. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of struggles that they go through. And I empathize with all of them because similarly, in the last 7 years, I've also been laid off or fired 3 times. The first time I was fired was the first job after the job that I was working at home from. And me and my manager just didn't see eye to eye, at least in that version of me. She liked to say the word strategic a lot, and she was really kind of patronizing at the time. And I didn't understand what it meant to be a professional. So that's the first lesson I kind of take into anything when it comes to understanding how to help all of you on Albert's List. I got fired for throwing one of my managers under the bus. And, if I could talk to her today, I would tell her that she was right about everything and that I'm the one who has learned to sound a lot like her. The second layoff or firing that I experienced was actually at my own alma mater. So after I started this group, about a month and a half after, I was actually able to go and work at my own alma mater as a social media manager and career services person. And that was actually probably one of the most interesting jobs of my life that I completely screwed up because I had no idea what I was doing. And it wasn't really until maybe I met Mike Tomasello that I understood that the point of working was to really deliver value and bring value to the organization that you work at. And in addition to that, it's also to help your organization make money, whether it's raising money or raising revenues and things like that. And so about 6 months after I took the job at Santa Clara, they also fired me. And they fired me for performance. I earned every bit of it. I was not sure why I was there. I was running networking events on the side, and that's why, these days I try to be as focused as possible. So that was the second reason why I got laid off. And then the third reason why I got laid off was due to a budget. Over at my third company when I first moved actually here to Orange County. And so that was a firing that was definitely not my fault at all. Not my fault one single bit. And I realized, upon coming home from that layoff that day, I actually felt pretty decent about myself because I knew I had a lot of people behind me. I had built this community up over time, and I had understood the value of giving back and how much that value of giving back can really help you down the road. And so when it came to going on that job search, which you heard from Mike earlier today, there was a lot of really good newfound lessons that I learned from that. And even furthermore, it gave me an understanding of just how volatile our work world is today. And so for those of you who come in here who have been laid off or who maybe got fired because you brought your boss coffee that was too hot, or you worked in a job that you weren't a good fit for, or any of those things, I'm here to tell you that Albert's List is your safe space. Anything that has happened to all of you at some point in your career, minus probably ageism and sexual harassment, I've probably gone through. And if I haven't gone through it, I can probably tag somebody who can walk you through it. Because, my whole entire purpose here is I want to be able to share resources. We live in a digital economy now where if you hoard resources, you're not going to win in any single facet of any single business game, social game, networking game, or whichever. If you share, on the other hand, you build bonds and you build collaborative bridges that help people get to their destination faster. And those are the things are the reason why I say what I say in this group on a daily basis, where it's like, I understand that many of you are here to find connections, find that job, discover that opportunity that's going to take yourself to the next level. But in addition to that, I want you to be able to network and build relationships with many of the solid people in here. And it's not just Mike Tomasello I was just telling you earlier about. I know that Vanessa Culver just joined. She's one of my good friends. She's out there in New York City. She runs her own group, Purposeful Professionals. We have offshoot groups in Seattle, Austin, Vegas, Southern California, where I'm here now, Austin, Chicago, New York, South Florida. I think it just mentioned some of those names a couple more times. We have over like 50 to 60 recruiters that are everywhere, from Nelson Technology to the Creative Group to Aerotech to Insight Global to Collabra to even inside corporate accounts too, corporations where people are in-house. And then we have career coaches, and we have offshoot coaches in other areas like dating. And we have resources of people who plan events, people who do all sorts of really interesting things. Like, for example, if you're in marketing and you want to be a part of the San Francisco American Marketing Association, that's Michael Brigham. If you want to go into women in tech, we have Veronica Eloff, who is one of the engagement people over there. And so one thing that I really realized overall is that the reason why most of you are struggling with work, and the reason why most of America struggles with work, is you have no idea where the hell to go find your resources. And that's not your fault. That is simply the fault of the gap between higher education or any form of education and the marketability of resources that are out there. There's this huge gap right now that needs to be filled, and I want to help fill some of that. Because it is really in your post-graduation life, where when you understand what it is that you want through a lot of trial and error and working through that trial and error, that you finally get to the end of it. We also often see that graphic where we think that life is this one straight line from where you are to success, and then there's that actual thing where you go through that lake, you climb the mountain, you cross a broken bridge, you got to fight that ogre, And that's actually what the professional life is around. I'm not saying that Albert's List is going to solve every one of your problems. You're not going to find that networking event that works for you like ASAP. But what you are going to find is you're going to find a connection with people. You're going to find people who are willing to help, right? There's that one quote that the master, when the student is ready, that the master will appear. And that's what Albert's List is also about, because we want to help you get ready for that day when that connection comes, when that networking event is there for you for the taking, where you can go to that networking event, hand over that business card and say, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. I'm here tonight for these 2 reasons, and I want to know what you're up to," and jump into that conversation and have the best networking conversation of your life. Because success is something that, is deserved to you. And success is something that can come to you in small bursts if you know how to come and find it. So I know I've been standing on my little box here for a little bit, and that's kind of why those are a lot of different reasons of why I started Albert's List. There's the personal struggle there and there. There's understanding what the professional world is like, having been here for a while and seeing all these new graduates struggle through it day by day. And then there's the belief that everyone should be able to pursue and seek the connections that they want so that they can experience the level of success that they may never thought that they could experience. And so that's why I'm in here every day. I mean, I could sit back and I could let Michael, Aditi, or Dominic run things, but I'm not going to do that because, like you guys, I'm one of you. I'm here at work 8 hours a day trying to figure out things, trying to balance my checkbook, trying to go out and trying to make things work. And I want to make things work for you too, because if we, especially in these political times, decide that we're going to just do things for ourselves and we're not going to help each other, this country's going to go down the tubes. A lot of things are going to go wrong. But if we at least have each other's back to somewhat, and if all of you are doing what you can to connect with each other and connect other people and scale this up by tens, hundreds, and you can say tens of thousands now because we're at 23,000 people. Imagine what you could do to change the world. And I know Pay It Forward was a really cheesy movie with that kid from Sixth Sense and Kevin Spacey, but the movie has a whole point, because if we only help ourselves but we don't help the next person next to us, and we know we have the resources to help them and maybe we don't need that resource, I feel like we're almost committing a sin because it's like, you can see that person, you can give that person a solution, and just why wouldn't you? And so as we go into this weekend, as we go into the second quarter of the year, as we go into April and the depths of spring and the early onslaught of summer, I want all of you to consider like how you can bring some of this Albert's List spirit into your own daily life, even just within the realm of this group, where you can provide a piece of advice, a job listing that you've received. You can connect with somebody on LinkedIn and bring some hope to them. People tell me that this group brings hope to them, and I want everyone to bring a little bit of hope to each other because I don't think that it should be so dark of a world. So, that's kind of my soapbox for why I started Albert's List. I hope that all of you enjoyed listening and that there's a lesson that all of you can take away from this. And so, I'm about to go and start and enjoy my weekend. I'm going to go surfing on Saturday and Sunday. But, I'll see all of you back here on Monday morning, and we're going to be ready to grind. We're going to be ready to help you find that next job, that next networking event, that next connection. And, I want to help change all of your lives, and I want to help you change other lives as well, because I believe too that when you elevate others and you give people the power to step up and show up for something, whether it's other people themselves or anything that it might be, that people are going to really deliver for you. And I want all of you to deliver for yourself, for other people, because I think we can truly make this a better world. So, yeah. That's kind of it for me. If you have any thoughts or comments, leave them down there below, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And so I'm going to wish you all a really, really great happy Friday, and we'll see you back here next week. And I hope you enjoyed my story. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.